Today we're marking the Shloshim of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks. Throughout this past month, organisations and communities across the world have been marking his passing through special events that have focused on Torah learning and Rabbi Sacks's own extensive writings. For what better way to reflect on an extraordinary life that has given so much to this world? My personal reflection is the impact that Rabbi Sacks made on the Jewish community and its future through his leadership of Jewish education and Jewish schools. Rabbi Sacks understood that freedom is attained through education, and Jewish continuity is attained through Jewish education. Therefore, what better way to honour his memory than for the two largest Jewish secondary schools to unite through the learning of Torah? Over the past month, more than 3,000 students at JFS and Yavneh College have been learning Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, Mishnayot that are not about halacha, Jewish law, but rather about how we should act and behave towards one another. What a fitting choice of subject to honour the man who has been described as the world's moral compass. In addition, I am proud that our students have had the opportunity to delve into some of Rabbi Sacks's writings. He had something important and relevant to say on so many topics, both Jewish and contemporary. I hope that this small taste will encourage you to read more of Rabbi Sacks's books, whether they be on leadership, on happiness, on honouring difference, or on morality. His sage advice and guidance lives on in his writings. However, as this siyum brings to a close our formal learning, I'd like to quote from one of my favourite Mishnayot in Pirkei Avot. In chapter 2 we learn, Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor. It is not your job to complete the task. V'lo ata ben chorin lehibatel mimena. But neither are you free to stand aside from it. Each one of us must involve ourselves in life's task. So what is that task? I believe it is our responsibility to do whatever we can to make the world a better place. But this is such a huge job that it can never be completed. And the Mishnah recognises this by reminding us that it isn't our job to complete the task. The work will be continued by others who follow us. Rabbi Sacks understood this message. He toiled hard to make the world a better place, but he knows that through his life's work, there are now others who will continue this job. In a few days' time, we will begin to celebrate the festival of Hanukkah. Whilst it's easy to focus on the donuts, the latkes, the gelt and the gifts, we mustn't lose sight of the significance and relevance of this Chag. The story of Hanukkah is all about freedom of belief. In his book, From Optimism to Hope, Rabbi Sacks says the following: Hanukkah is about the freedom to be true to what we believe without denying the freedom of those who believe otherwise. It's about lighting our own candle while not being threatened by or threatening anyone else's candle. I hope that you take this message with you as we bring this learning project to a close. Remember that to be a proud Jew is to be knowledgeable of and engaged with your own traditions, whilst at the same time respecting the traditions of others. And what of our Mishnah? It ends with the phrase, V'da, shematan scharan shel tzadikim la'atid lavo. Know that the reward of the righteous is granted in the time to come. Whilst it's true that Rabbi Sacks had many awards and honours bestowed upon him during his lifetime, his greatest reward will be bestowed upon him in time to come. Now this is often interpreted as Olam Haba, the world to come. But I believe that particularly in this case, it also means that his reward is in the legacy he leaves in this world, a world full of children being educated in Jewish schools to secure our Jewish future. Congratulations and well done to all our students for your diligent learning, of which I know Harav Yaakov Tzvi ben David Aryeh would have been both humbled and proud. Yehi Zichro Baruch. May his memory be for a blessing.
Having just finished Shabbat Parashat Vayetze, And now sitting here thinking about a message for this siyum, this completion of a cycle of learning in memory of Rabbi Dr. Sachs, my teacher and our former chief rabbi, is really interesting. We read Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva vayelech Harana. But why does the Torah tell us Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva? What's the significance of this idea of Vayetze, and he went out? Why does the Torah tell us that he left? We knew that he left, because in the last week's parasha, it told us when they were arguing, Yaakov and Esav, that Yaakov ran away from his brother Esav, and so he left. So why does it tell us that again? And there's a very famous Rashi on these words at the beginning of the parasha. It says, Rashi, Yitziat tzaddik min hamakom oseh roshem. That when a tzaddik leaves a place, it makes an impression. And when they've left that place, the glory and splendor and beauty that they have made there, that place is suddenly desolate of it. It doesn't exist anymore. And I've been thinking about that a lot over the last few days about Rabbi Sachs. He's leaving us. He leaves us with a gaping hole, a massive void. His departure means that we all have so much to do. But the impression that he made, the legacy that he left, the message of Torah, of having a positive, outward-looking Judaism, and the joy and positivity that we can find in life remains strong. So the pasuk tells us, Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva, and the obvious question is, secondly, in addition to the first question, why did it tell us that he left Beersheva? We know that he was in Beersheva, and there's nothing in the Torah that's superfluous, that's unnecessary. So why tell us that he left Beersheva? It tells us that because famously the rabbis tell us that you need to know where you've come from in order to know where you're going to. Your roots, that which you've been taught in your early years, are essential in knowing where you're trying to get to. And this is a very powerful message for us. Rabbi Sachs was my teacher. I personally always have to remember where I came from, who taught me, and what they taught me, in order to be able to focus on where I'm going. This learning project with Yavneh College and JFS pupils together learning has been incredibly powerful. The fact that almost 3,000 young people have joined together to study and find modern meanings within ancient texts is exactly what Rabbi Sachs stood for, and exactly what he would have been extremely proud of. Kol hakavod. Well done, and may his memory be a blessing to all of us.
The quote that means the most to me is, to be a Jewish child is to learn how to question. I think that because you have to question your identity, because if you don't, you won't understand what you are davening or learning about, and if you don't understand, there's no point, and you don't believe in anything. So to question is the most important thing, I think.
And Jordan?
I've really enjoyed taking 10 minutes out of our lesson to learn about Rabbi Sachs, because he was such a great person and he can be such an influence in our lives, and his quotes can really help us in the future.
What's your favourite?
I think it's really important. My favourite quote of his is this one. Faiths are like languages. There are many of them and they are not reducible to one another. I think it's very important because it shows that languages, you need to know a language to communicate, and it's so important to communicate with people, and you need faith as well to communicate, and it's comparing them together, because without any faith you wouldn't have courage and self-love, and that's really important.
I've really just enjoyed learning more about my background.
I've really enjoyed seeing a rabbi's perspective on all different aspects of Jewish life.
What's the most important quote to you?
To me, it is the one about anti-Semitism. It taught me about why people could possibly have something against us as Jews, because I didn't really understand that before.
And is there any quote you're going to take and apply to your life?
Yeah, it's the one that says, Jews were commanded to become the people who never forget, and they never did. And it really just pushes me to remember that, what it means to be Jewish, and push myself to do more to do with the Jewish community.
After recently reading Rabbi Sachs's book Morality, there are some incredibly inspiring themes throughout, a couple of which I'd like to share in his memory. One idea of his that resonates with me is that the collective strength we find in strong communities held together by moral bonds provides resilience. Here he illustrates the importance of kindness and helping others before ourselves, both of which are important elements of community and attributes that Rabbi Sachs strongly valued. He believed it was important to not just do what's good for oneself, but to do what's good for all of us together. It's amazing how applicable this is to the situation we currently find ourselves in. It's almost like the book was written to guide us through the pandemic. The coronavirus physically separated people through lockdown and isolation. However, it's also important to note that it brought people together, particularly through the power of the internet and social media. I personally think this is particularly evident within the Jewish community, as throughout lockdown we've enjoyed numerous Zoom Kabbalat Shabbats and many more events to keep the community together and united. People also began looking out for others more so than before through helping neighbours with their shopping that couldn't go out themselves. The unfortunate situation has also brought families together, which would have thrilled Rabbi Sachs as a particularly family-orientated man. This ultimately brings us back to the collective strength within community and the importance of togetherness. Rabbi Sachs discusses later on in his book that society is about the moral values we share. I certainly think that this is particularly relevant for us. It may not be a moral value, but Shabbat is certainly something that we as a Jewish community value. Rabbi Sachs is often discussing the negative effects of unsocial media, as he puts it, which I would argue highlights his belief in the importance of Shabbat, the day of rest. Rabbi Sachs would agree that Shabbat is a time to literally switch off from the world, re-engage with community through prayer and celebrations, spending quality time with friends and family. Community and the family help frame an individual, as people tend to influence and be influenced by those around them. Rabbi Sachs demonstrates in his book when he says, we are who we are because of the groups to which we belong. Being part of the Yavneh College community is something that I cherish, with so many of Rabbi Sachs's values and morals mirroring those of Yavneh. Yavneh is all about friendship, community and kindness, so I think Rabbi Sachs, as the truly inspirational person that he was, would fully endorse Yavneh's motto, Olam Chesed Yavneh, a world built on kindness.
In Yavneh, we studied Pirkei Avot, which translates in English as Ethics of Our Fathers, and is a compilation of the ethical teachings from our rabbinic Jewish tradition. As a whole school, we studied in the name of Lord Rabbi Sachs, and the Mishnah I chose to focus on was Perek Dalet Mishnah Dalet. As in the Mishnah, in summary, it states that we should have extreme modesty, as at the end of a mortal man is the worm, i.e. the grave. The message and idea I can take away from this is that we should be humble, as in the end we will return to the grave, hoping to go into the Olam Haba. We can put this into everyday practice, as the Torah says, love your neighbor like you love yourself. We wouldn't want to be humiliated, so we shouldn't humiliate others. Instead, we should be humble and everyone else will be happier.